Welcome to the Expedition One podcast. Today we are going to be talking about brand ambassadors and sponsorship requests to give you some insights on what we're looking for and how it works. And if you have any curiosity surrounding this topic, as with me always is Sarah. And we are, ready to roll. Are you ready to roll? We got our Zevias.
Yep.
I'm opening mine. Okay. This is much more Sarah's thing than it is my thing. For the most part.
Yeah.
Most of the requests and stuff that come in cross her desk versus mine.
Yeah. Probably before yours at least.
Yeah. So let's get into the gist of it. Let's start here. Okay. So what exactly, when it comes to sponsorship, what kind of things do we sponsor? What do we like to sponsor?
Okay. So let me back up one step and talk about the process to what our sponsorship process is. So we have an application form that's just a Google form, right? So we'll send you a link if you request it, and we have you fill out all the information, and that's step one. Because we do get a lot of people who will just kind of reach out with, a little bit of this information or that, and ultimately we're just going to direct them back to that process because we have a process that we want to go through. So I feel bad when people have spent time typing up a 5-page paper on, why they want sponsorship, when I'm just going to have them fill out this 2-page form at the end of the day.
Right.
Anyway, because there's really specific information that we're looking for, right?
Okay.
So, what are we looking for in terms of sponsorship? So shows are probably one of our top, in our grid of values and what we're looking for. Shows are a big one. And obviously some shows have more weight than others.
Yep.
So, and to clarify, attendance at a show means that you're going to be, your vehicle is going to be in a booth at the show.
Right.
Not necessarily in the parking lot, or you're attending the show as an attendee.
Yeah, that's a thing that we've run into a few times, and it's kind of strange that perceptively somebody thinks that just because they're attending the show,
they're going to the show.
Since they're going to the show, not that their vehicle's gonna. There's a big difference between your vehicle being at the show, your vehicle being featured in the show, and your vehicle being in a booth at the show. Right. And there's more weight towards if your vehicle is going to be in a booth at the show, right? That has more weight than your vehicle being a feature vehicle at the show. And contrary to what some might think, your vehicle being in the parking lot is virtually worthless. So we don't.
Maybe a little.
Well, it's not really.
It's not what we're looking for.
Show, right?
In terms of sponsorship, right?
If your vehicle is in the parking lot in Las Vegas at the SEMA show, it's in the parking lot.
Yeah. And the Overland Expos, and there's a lot of people.
It's a little
there.
different there, yeah. Overland Expo,
lot,
there's a lot of social behavior going on there. A lot of people chatting though, but it's not really where we see or anticipate a lot of return from.
Right. So we're going to ask you what booth your vehicle is going to be in, and who's your point of contact, so that we can follow up with them to verify.
So that can be verified. Yeah, and if that's not verified, then we can't really.
It just doesn't help.
Yeah.
Doesn't help your case so much in terms of sponsorship or whatever.
Right.
And then, so you mentioned feature vehicles. That's pretty specific to SEMA show.
It is very specific to
and
SEMA.
SEMA show does obviously carry a lot more weight with it than any of the other shows. Probably in terms of what we're looking at, it's the highest weighted show when it comes to your chances of getting sponsorship. So particularly if it's in a booth inside SEMA. Not to say that feature vehicles aren't important, because they are, especially, there's different levels of feature vehicles at SEMA also. So, depending on the level of feature, maybe it's one that's got a little bit more money backing it, and it's getting a prime location, whatever. There's more weight to that.
Yeah. If it's going to be in the lobby or right out in front of one of the
that's good.
Buildings, or it's there's times where stuff gets exiled to a back lot and it's just not really going to be seen, and that's not the best situation.
Not ideal.
So that's why feature vehicles are it's a little bit of a crapshoot, and it's a little bit different of a level of sponsorship generally that comes along with that.
Right. Yeah. But a lot of folks are, so, you know, if you have someone that's you're working with and they're going to put your vehicle in the show, again, it's just, we want to know more details. So, what booth it's going to be in, you know, who's the contact, and then, particularly with SEMA, but some other shows where there's, you know, tight booth scenarios, we want to know how the vehicle is going to be placed in the booth. What's the plan?
Yeah.
Usually with SEMA, you kind of have to have a little bit of a general layout. They're not like super sticklers about you turning that in, but they do like to know what your layout's going to be. So if I'm sponsoring a rear tire carrier system, and that's literally right up against the back of the booth, and no one can walk around it to see it.
No one can see it.
That's
Nobody
not great.
can even know it's there.
That's not great for a sponsorship scenario. So that's also important, is how the vehicle is going to be placed in the booth, because obviously we want eyes on product. And SEMA is one, again, that we put a lot of weight on, because there's just so much coverage that comes out of that show. Just a lot of foot traffic, a lot of YouTube content, just a whole lot of buzz that happens around the SEMA event. Well, other events are definitely getting a lot bigger.
Overland Expo is a good example, right?
It's getting huge. Excuse me. Flagstaff event last year was amazing, huge.
It was pretty big, well attended,
Very
well
well
attended too. Yeah.
So those all those Overland Expo events are definitely ones that carry more weight as well. So you've got Expo West in Flagstaff. You've got a new show that they're starting this year in Bend, Oregon, the Pacific Northwest event. Colorado is the Mountain West, and then Expo East.
Okay.
So those are all events that we're also pretty interested in seeing sponsorship at. Now, we do get a lot of people offering, say, I'd like sponsorship and you can use my vehicle in your booth or at whatever shows you need. We don't typically, because we do so many of our own builds, at least for Expedition 1, that's not something we generally need. We have a lot of vehicles that we take around to shows and events.
Yeah.
Other companies in the industry, definitely.
Some of them do that.
That's just a little tip.
Yeah.
I think there's others that would like those scenarios.
For us, I think it really depends on what we're getting out of it, right? You know what I mean? Because it's just in certain circumstances, if there was a vehicle that I just wasn't going to get access to and couldn't have access to, then that's a scenario where that works. And we wanted access to. Right now, that's interesting. There's vehicles right now that are really hard to get. We've done a pretty good job getting the vehicles that we've wanted, that we plan for shows. But there's certain instances where I'm like, yeah, okay. You know, if I don't have to carry the burden of owning the vehicle, right, and having to hunt down the vehicle and get one. I mean, we had a vehicle we ended up flying to Denver just to get in time for a show. Yeah. Because we had sponsorship stuff lined up for it. Yeah. We were supposed to have the vehicle, didn't have the vehicle, so we had to buy one. That was a lot of work. So being saved from that kind of situation is nice, but usually what that means too is that I'm going to need some unprecedented access to the vehicle for long periods of time in order to get everything developed and taken care of. So that's one of the trade-offs of those kind of scenarios.
So maybe we can tangent into that for just a sec too, because that is a frequently asked question about product development. Okay. Where people say, hey, you know, I know a lot of people want this product. There's not much available out there. Yeah. Will you guys make it? Or, you know, would you consider doing that? So, let's talk a little bit about our process for that, how we get to a place that we do look at making a product and what we need from an individual in those instances where we don't have the car, what kind of commitment level it is.
Yeah. So we get a lot of people that will contact us and say, you know, do you make something for this vehicle? And generally when somebody's asking me to make something for a vehicle that is from the 90s, you know, it's 20 years old. It's like, we're probably not going to do that.
There's some exceptions, like
it's potential. I say there could be. I'm not saying there is.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, yeah, it's possible that there could be an exception. But usually when you're not talking about something that's a new vehicle in the last 5 to 10 years, it's probably not worth the development time. It's just not likely. I mean, it is possible that there's some strange scenario that there's a vehicle out there that nobody ever used. And then all of a sudden it's got this weird cult following and everybody just discovered it, right? I mean, that could be possible. I've never seen that, but I'm just saying it could be, right? You never know. When it came to Sprinter vans, like 2012, if you were telling me that people would be building up Sprinter vans and in the level that they do, I would have not believed it for a second. But you have a ton of people doing it. Now, the thing about it, though, is you have a ton of people that are building up new Sprinter vans. Yeah. You know, some people are building on older model years that are 4 or 5 years, but they're not going back 20 years.
No, not so much.
Building Sprinter vans. So usually that's what it requires. It requires it to be a little bit more current. And it just requires one of those things where it's like, okay, well, is it viable? Is the platform a viable platform that people are going to want? We've had people talk to us about doing Subaru bumpers, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to do that, just because I don't see it as that much of a viable platform for a lot of stuff. And we did it reluctantly on the Cherokees, right? The Cherokee Trailhawks, right? And that was just because there were so many people, like all the time. Every show is going through. Yeah, no, it was like a mob. You're like, there's mobs at shows, and you're like, what is going on? There's like 5 dudes sitting here asking me to build Cherokee Trailhawk bumpers for the new Cherokee, right? And I'm like, it has more in common with a car than it does with a SUV almost, right? So that's one normally we just wouldn't have touched, but then it was like, all right, well, let's give it a shot. And we did, and it ended up okay, right? Yeah. But it was kind of what I expected. And that's the hardest part about it is like, when somebody's asking you to develop something for a truck that we don't make, right? Okay, we don't make something for their Chevys that we don't make bumpers for. Okay, if somebody's willing to, if I don't have to go out and buy the car, if somebody's going to bring me the vehicle, if I can get the CAD or if I can do scans or I can gather information or whatever to develop the product, I'm happy to do that, right? And just the single development of that product, I can guarantee though, if I do that, let's say I did that for somebody that had a truck that worked, that single development time and that sell of that product, if I sell it at full retail, is not going to return on that time invested at all. It's not even going to get close, right? So ran the numbers several times now to kind of actually find out what that really was. And when you're developing a single product, even if I develop like front bumper, rear bumper, and a roof rack, right? So I had 3 products that I got from that one vehicle. Usually the cost in developing each one of those products, selling one of them will not return on investment on the retail end. Right. Selling 4 or 5 of them will probably cover the cost. And then anything past that is actually where you actually make some profit. So when we're looking at those kind of vehicles, those are factors that we have to think about. Like, is it viable? Are we having to purchase the vehicle? Are they bring the vehicle to us to use? It's all those kind of factors.
And in that scenario where we do say, okay, we're going to do this, you usually need vehicle up front for a week or 2 to do your initial
just get scans, the information,
right? Yeah. Then there's a whole period of time of actual development, and then there's just a prototype and made,
test fitting, and that's where we
need the vehicle for like a month to do test fitting, in certain cases, checking, tweaking, etc.
Because you're going to build 3 different bumpers potentially. Like say it's a front bumper, you're going to do it 3 different times to change pieces as you go, and it takes time, and
so that's what's involved in that. So if you're thinking of reaching out to us and saying, hey, I've got a truck and I want you to do bumpers and I'll let you use it, that's kind of considerations like, could you leave it with us for a month and at a time, and then a couple weeks and bring it back and forth a little. That's kind of the scenario that we're in.
And usually also I'll add in the situation where it's a vehicle that we're probably going to do development for, we're probably just going to buy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
like this, one of the newer ones, and
we're just going to go out and buy the vehicle already because we know that we're probably going to see potential.
But there's some older stuff and Land Cruiser stuff and stuff like that. But
there's other potential things.
Potentials.
Yeah.
So, but back to, so typically we don't need vehicles for our booze, except there's maybe exception of some East Coast shows that we just don't make it out to.
Really go out to the East Coast.
So, Jeep Beach, Expo East, some of those like bigger shows on the East Coast. So sponsorship tip is, if you're an East Coast person and you can get your vehicle in to a booth at one of those shows, that's something that us out here on the West Coast would put a little bit more weight on. Okay. So that's shows. We talked about shows. We talked about location. So one of the other things that will be asked in the application is, in the sponsorship application is if your vehicle is going to be in any publications. Yeah. So a little bit of an old school thing these days now, but there's still some online magazines. There's print magazines. There's some other, there's some stuff going on still.
Magazines they don't carry the weight they used to.
Not quite the same.
Just not quite the same because most people are getting their stuff from the internet. So.
But particularly if you're having like a whole featured article, on your vehicle, that's of interest. And then of course you have social media, so which is a little bit trickier, as far as when we're looking at influencers and what makes for a lot of traffic on social media. Definitely fans of organic followers, and we're looking for traffic in your comments and back and forth discussions on your posts, not a bunch of
it's not just about
reposts.
You have 50,000 followers and there's no back and forth between you and your followers. I'm trying to remember what they call that, but that has a very specific term. Engagement, basically. If there's no engagement, it's kind of weird.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a little weird.
Us.
Well, yeah, it's a little weird.
That's what my kids would say.
You normally should have some engagement on your posts if they are legitimate.
Yeah.
So
if they're not a bunch of purchased followers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're leery of those scenarios.
Yeah, we're careful of that kind of thing. But that's a whole other thing too. Is that's quality. That's associated with quality. If you're engaging with the people that are following you, that means you've got good quality posts and people are interested in taking a engagement in that and want to communicate and learn. And that's kind of the key, what we're looking for there.
That is the key.
I would say.
Yeah.
So,
and that kind of would lead us into, what brand ambassadors, which are a little bit different from sponsorship. And those wouldn't necessarily be a scenario where, we have a discount, maybe not having a full sponsorship scenario, and you working with us a little bit more closely, maybe on product testing or development.
Yeah.
We use a lot of our brand ambassadors to get feedback, or if we're changing things up in a design, or, we want to see, we're implementing some new processes or parts. The brand ambassadors are folks that we want to reach out to, and we're going to work with you a little bit more on that.
And I would say in most of our sponsorship scenarios too, I'm presuming that kind of just how we handle this as far as, what level we end up putting them at or whatever. There are dependents on how long they're going to keep the product in their vehicle, what they're planning on doing, what they're willing to commit to that. We're definitely looking for, usually we're expecting a year, right?
At a minimum. Yeah.
At a minimum. So that they're actually going to keep the vehicle, they're going to use it, promote it, social media, and take it to the shows that they've committed to, and etc.
Right.
So
lots of photos, lots of videos,
Right.
I've had folks with really high engagement, but their posts didn't include a lot of the actual product, or they were off doing their own
not
thing.
A lot of product, not a lot of tags in there and stuff.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of tagging, a lot of
we're
product
requesting
shots.
like shots, like at least post once a week and they're posting like once every 2 months.
Yeah,
and,
that's pretty disappointing when we're in those scenarios.
It's not really what we're looking for. So, but okay. So yeah, with brand ambassadors though, I mean, we're not necessarily looking for someone that's going to be attending the shows. We're just looking for a partner in the side of development, right? And promotion, right? But they're just more going to be a little bit more grassroots. And it's not our big thing isn't you're going to have 1 million followers.
Right.
Our big thing is that you're just going to be someone good to work with. You're particularly in the product development world, that you're going to test it out, use it, be genuine about your testing, and you're going to recognize that we're putting a lot of faith in you, but it's a partnership.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's an important partnership so that we can get the product right, or we can what needs to change or what we can make better, and etc. So
exactly. Yeah. That is it pretty much in a nutshell.
That's it in a nutshell.
Is sponsorship, or at least, what we're doing on our side for Expedition One sponsorship.
So I've got one other point of sponsorship that I know comes up, and because we've mostly been focusing on product for vehicles. What about we get these things from little clubs and stuff like that, little clubs and groups and everything like that, asking for different sponsorship and stuff like that. How does that work and how does that weigh?
So in terms of like their events and whatnot, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like because a lot of them will have an event, right? And they'll ask for something, and it's just a matter of, okay, so what are we willing to give for that usually? And does something outweigh, because does something else outweigh something else, right?
Okay.
Something bigger.
Sure.
I know there's events in the past where people are asking for product, right?
Yeah.
And here's I'll just kind of break this down. What's difficult about product can be, so Easter Jeep Safari, right? Part of our booth space is paid in product, right? And they think that's great. They're fine with that. And we're fine with that. And because it's a Jeep specific event, that's pretty easy to work around. And plus we're going to have a booth there, and we're going to be seen there, and we have a pretty big presence, and Easter Jeep Safari is a big show. Yeah. It's pretty big. Whereas there are smaller shows that, events that are going to have, they're not going to have thousands of people. They might have a couple hundred people there. And we're not opposed to giving product for those either. But, we've had it where certain events, they almost expect us to give a large product, and you're like, that's not really, there's not a ton of people there for that kind of thing. The other problem is when you have a general Easter Jeep Safari is Jeeps. Yeah. And so you're going to have, most people are going to have a JK or a JL. It's really easy to apply a front bumper to both of them, and you have that broader potential. Whereas if it's just a general 4x4 club, so many different things. It's really hard to get something because our stuff is so vehicle specific.
Yeah, exactly. We don't do that one size fits all kind of thing.
So what are we willing to do? What do we generally do for those kind of events?
Yeah, so there are some events where we actually send product, or it's included as part of like our participation in the show. And then we do a lot of gift certificates and stuff like that for, especially, if it's across the country, or, another show like that's going to have a mix of vehicles or different types there. We're always happy to support that stuff.
Maybe
as much as we can.
Maybe some small swag or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we get a lot of requests for that kind of stuff, and we try to support as much as we can.
Okay.
So yeah. And that's just no application for that. We just usually get, most of these event organizers have, their form letter that they're sending out to a whole bunch of different people. So, we work off of those when it comes to event requests.
Okay.
The standard letter's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. And that's sponsorship in a nutshell.
That is sponsorship
basically
in a nutshell.
how we
Everything
do it.
you want to know.
Yep.
Hopefully, if not, put it in the comments and we'll try to
Maybe
answer
we can
it.
add to it a little bit, answer a few questions.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, should we end it? Should we call it good?
We should call it good.
We should call it good. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for, I hope you enjoyed learning about sponsorship. And yeah, like Sarah said, if you have any questions or anything or curiosities, you could actually email us or throw it in the comments. We'll see what we can answer about it. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.